All right, we're here at FITC Vancouver on a pretty dreary day, unfortunately, but this is the winter in Vancouver. But I have a rare opportunity to talk with the well-known Grant Skinner, interactive designer,
developer more so than designer, I guess.
So for people who, because we talk to a lot of different people, what does an interactive developer slash designer do?
Well, we build interactive experiences, which I know doesn't help the question much, but basically we work with client-side technologies to build, experiences, things like games, rich content, content-driven sites, and basically create them and deploy them.
And what are the different things that you deploy with? Is it Flash, HTML5? Is it video? What do you particularly focus in on?
So we tend to focus on sort of the cutting edge of interactive. In the past, that meant that we did mostly Flash work. We're still doing a bunch of Flash work, but we've really started to move into the HTML5 space. And because my role in the company is to sort of spearhead where we're going and where the future is, my life has been almost entirely HTML5 over the last couple of years.
And what was it like, looking at Flash and looking at HTML5 and trying to do a lot of the things in a very well-established library with Flash? I mean, Flash does all this amazing stuff, and then it's kind of like, okay, now we've got this, in the browser, and we're dealing with web standards and things like that. Was it a big shift? Was it on par, or what was it that you found was kind of the good, bad, and ugly?
I mean, there's definitely a lot of frustrating points. We were able to take a lot of our knowledge around how interactive should work, so like what the experience should be, what the user experience should be, and really bring that forward onto web standards. At the same time, web standards are a much more sort of scattered set of technologies, right? They've been developed by a lot of different companies, a lot of different groups. There's still a lot of inconsistencies between browsers, although that seems to be getting better, and it's sort of been filled in a lot of ways by the open source community. But we definitely had to learn how to work with different environments and make our experiences work everywhere. So, but at the same time, learning how to work with JavaScript and learning how to work with the APIs was pretty straightforward. It was more around the philosophies and some of the secondary challenges than the core technology.
And so when you would want to do something like, let's say, sprite animation and things like that, is it that the principles pretty much stay the same? It's just how you actually go about making that happen that's so different? Right.
I mean, the development of the approaches that you take and the ways that you surface things to users are very similar, right? How you deal with animations, how you deal with user interaction, whether it's mouse or touch or keyboard, how you deal with things like asynchronous actions, like loading data from a server. All of those things port straight across. And it's really more about, if I'm doing layout, do I want to do this using CSS, or do I want to use JavaScript, or do I want to use HTML features, and learning about all of these different facets of web development and learning which ones are appropriate in which places. And also, as we sort of narrow in on the types of experiences that we want to build, which tend to mirror some of the stuff that we were doing before in Flash, building some of our own open source solutions that make that easier, and also make it easier for the community at large.
Yeah. And when you build things, like I know you built Pirates Love Daisies, which, by the way, every time I mention that, and I show it to people, they're like, wow, that's cool. And especially when I show it to them in HTML5, and they're like, wait a minute, this isn't a native app, but it definitely feels like one. And and when you were building that, was that sort of where you were learning about how HTML5 worked and all the kind of work that you did around that? Was that sort of the beginning of what you did, or had you been doing anything before that?
I mean, we had dabbled in HTML in the past. We actually did like a big sort of multimedia search engine, the client side of it for, I think it was Comcast at one point. And honestly, I mean, that was about 5 years ago, and at the time when we finished the project, my senior developer on it told me he would quit if he ever had to do HTML again.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've come quite a ways. I mean, even between that project and Pirates, I actually had the same developer work on Pirates, and he was pretty excited about it throughout. So it shows how much easier it's become to build this type of content, right?
Yeah, and I know that Canvas is sort of, you know, one of the ways that, you know, people can, you know, draw to a browser. What is the challenge there? Is it that, you know, Canvas is kind of this unique thing where it's not a create an object and then kind of manipulate that object. It's more of this animation style. Does that kind of cause more challenges?
Totally. I mean, Canvas is a really fast drawing layer, but Canvas is direct draw, which basically means, you know, you tell it to draw a circle, it doesn't, after it's done drawing it, it doesn't know anything about that circle anymore. It just knows about the pixels that are put down. And so, I mean, that's why we built Easel.js, which was the first library that we created for CreateJS, was to manage a display list and manage objects on a canvas so that we could do things like mouse interaction and animation and just make it much easier to work with that API.
And so you mentioned CreateJS, which is really interesting because tell people about what is CreateJS and how did it come about?
So CreateJS actually started because of Pirates Love Daisies. When we started that project, we decided we were going to build on top of Canvas because at the time IE9 had just added GPU acceleration for Canvas, and we wanted to show that off. And when we started working with Canvas, we realized it was really tricky. Like, the APIs were hard to work with, they were fairly limiting, and so we wanted to make that easier. And so as part of the Pirates Love Daisies project, we built Easel.js, which was sort of an abstracted, generic display list for working with Canvas, and then we built Pirates on top of that. And when we released Pirates to the public, we also released Easel.js to the developer community. And since then, we've been continuing to update Easel.js, and we've added Sound.js for dealing with web audio. We've added Preload.js for loading assets, and we've added Tween.js, which lets you do animation in a much easier way.
Oh, nice. And I know that when I tell people about CreateJS, when I tell them about Sound.js, and hey, you can actually deal with sound in HTML5, just anyone who's ever done that kind of work,
yeah.
They're just, let me go download this now because it's always been such a hassle.
We say that Sound.js makes working with audio on the web easier, but not easy.
Right.
Because yeah, audio on the web is definitely one of those big challenges still.
Yeah, it still has a way to go. And so when we're talking now, we're literally about less than a week away from Pure Imagination, which is a event we're putting on in Toronto. So we're going to jump on planes and head in that direction. And so you're going to be keynoting that for us. And can you just give us like a little teaser of the types of things that you might talk about?
So a little bit about my own experience in the industry and kind of my transition into HTML5, and talking a bit about apps versus HTML, or apps and HTML, and kind of what that world is looking like, and maybe make a little bit of fun of Mark Zuckerberg here and there where I can.
Oh, that's something definitely to look forward to. So thank you very much for spending time and talking with us. And like we said, we want everyone to come out to Pure Imagination. And of course, go and check out Woot Studio at wootstudio.ca for all kinds of app building goodness. Thanks.